Hi folks, it's Ryan Burns, and today I wanted to briefly discuss what I think is a pretty cool subject and something that was just released in the latest batch of FBI files. It's the 8 questions that the FBI asked confessors to determine if they were in fact D.B. Cooper. In the Cooper case, we've essentially got 4 types of quote-unquote confessors. I'll just go through them briefly. First off, we have the deathbed confessions, and I imagine that for most people, the person who comes to mind most in this category is Dwayne Weber. Then you've got men who made confessions to family or friends without being on their deathbed. These are suspects like Wolfgang Gossett, Barb Dayton, or Walter Recca. In the next category, I've got men who don't outright confess, but do the wink-wink, nudge-nudge sort of thing. They get kind of cute when they're asked about it. I'd say Robert Rackstraw is probably the best example of this.
As you mentioned yourself, your background suggests that you could have been D.B. Cooper.
Could have been. Could have been.
Sheridan Peterson did this a little bit as well. Then the last category of confessors are the real oddballs. These are people who walked into police stations or FBI offices and straight up claimed to be D.B. Cooper. These men were undoubtedly suffering from some mental illness, or they were simply playing pranks on law enforcement for whatever reason. A notable example of this occurred in 1981 following the release of The Pursuit of D.B. Cooper, which brought considerable attention back onto the case. On December 3rd of that year, a man went into the Portland Police Department headquarters at 2:30 in the morning claiming to be D.B. Cooper. He told the officers there that he was motivated to turn himself in because he was, quote, tired of people making fun of me and thinking that the skyjacking was just a joke. He was quickly escorted out of the building and told to come back the next day if he wanted to try again. They said maybe they would have somebody with the FBI there when he comes back. Of course, he never came back. As crazy as it may seem, these false confessions to actual law enforcement happened with more frequency than anybody would expect. Larry Carr said that the people were still doing this when he was working the case in the 2000s. So to easily suss out these hoaxers, the FBI came up with a list of questions, the answers to which they figured wouldn't be known by these people, but would only be known by the real Cooper himself. So we'll go through these today. First question. Did D.B. Cooper purchase his airline ticket from a man or a woman? And was that man or woman young or old? The answer to this one is that it was an older man. Dennis Lisney was the ticket agent for Northwest Orient that day. As for his age, Lisney was about 48 at the time. A misconception that some people have about this case is that the name Dan Cooper on the ticket was written by Cooper himself, but it was in fact written by Mr. Lisney. Second, did D.B. Cooper stand or sit while waiting to board the plane? The information that provides this answer comes from the gate agent Hal Williams. He said that he noticed Cooper standing off to the side, staring out the window. So, standing is our answer here. Third, when D.B. Cooper boarded the plane, was he among the first passengers to board, in the middle, or one of the last passengers to board? According to stewardess Florence Schaffner, who was checking passengers' tickets as they came on board, he was the second to last on board the plane. Number 4, precisely where did D.B. Cooper sit in the airplane? Right or left side of the plane, window or aisle seat, in the front or the back of the airplane, or toward the middle? I feel like this question's kind of weak. Even back in 1971, a cursory reading of newspaper articles about the hijacking would have informed somebody that he sat in the back of the plane, seat 18E, which is a middle seat on the right side of the plane. Number 5, what were the sexes of any persons that D.B. Cooper sat next to? The answer here is pretty easy, and it seems like this could have been found out by a hoaxer. Cooper only sat next to 2 people on the flight. These were stewardesses Florence Schaffner and Tina Mucklow. Next we have number 6. In precisely what manner did D.B. Cooper communicate his demands? And what was communicated? I suppose the generic answer here would be that his demands were written down by Florence Schaffner. These were written on the back of the envelope that his original hijacking note had been placed in when he gave it to her. As for what was communicated, he said he wanted parachutes and $200,000, of course. If one wanted to get really deep into this particular question, it could also be pointed out that some of his demands were communicated at a later time by Tina Mucklow through the interphone to the guys in the cockpit. There were several times during the hijacking where Cooper was like, oh yeah, I also want this or that. Number 7. Specifically, what, if anything, did D.B. Cooper carry on the airplane? Well, I suppose precisely what he carried on the airplane would not even be known by the FBI or anybody else other than the real Cooper. But I suppose the answer that the FBI wanted here was they wanted to hear that he carried a briefcase and a bag onto the plane with him. This bag is often referred to as the mystery bag because its contents are unknown. Since nothing inside the bag was actually used during the hijacking, my best guess as to its contents are that it had items that were to be used during his jump or to assist his escape. I think it likely that it also contained a pistol, which he would have needed if his bomb was fake and someone called him out on it being fake. Regardless, the existence of this mystery bag is something that even people today who are interested in this case often overlook. So, some guy back in 1981 almost certainly would not have known about this bag. Lastly, what were the exact colors of the panels in the parachute that D.B. Cooper used? The answer here is quite simple. His parachute canopy was all white. So there you have it. Those were the FBI's questions. Personally, if I was trying to stump a hoaxer before 2008 or so, and I had one question to ask a guy to determine if he really was D.B. Cooper or just a hoaxer, I think I'd ask him what drink he ordered and what he did with that drink. Newspapers and books over the decades constantly labeled Cooper as drinking bourbon and water. This is even erroneously written in notable nonfiction books on the topic, like Norjack by Agent Ralph Himmelsbach and D.B. Cooper Dead or Alive by former agent Richard Tusaw. We now know that Cooper actually ordered bourbon and 7-Up. This wasn't something known about until 2008 when Agent Larry Carr began to share details like this with the public. As for what Cooper did with the drink, well, he spilled it. This was actually what drew passenger Bill Mitchell's attention to Cooper in the first place. This also was a detail that wasn't ever publicly shared until Agent Carr wrote about it on a message board in 2008, and it wasn't widely known until the 2011 publication of Jeffrey Gray's Skyjack. So yeah, before 2008, I would have asked one of these hoaxers what he did with the drink. I can't imagine any of them would think that the cool and collected Cooper of media hype would have spilt his drink. Well, that's all for today. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe and all that YouTubey stuff. Subscribing doesn't cost anything and only takes one click, and it really does help me grow this channel a whole lot. I will talk to y'all again soon.